bound with this chain. Do you know why Paul stayed in prison when he could have paid off Felix and allowed him to go free, and then just started his journey on to Rome his own way? Remember, as we've studied the accounts of Paul throughout this, God used the Roman army to protect Paul from his brethren, who took an oath that they wouldn't even eat until Paul was dead. God used all of this to protect him. Here we are at the very final days, this long journey coming to an end, and we find once again the motivation that caused Paul to be bound in chain, and it was because of the hope for Israel. He had a burden for his people. He had a burden for his people. Romans chapter 10 and verse 1, brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. That was Paul's burden for his people. His burden was so strong that he was willing to go through 2.5 years of imprisonment, of storms, of shipwreck, even before that of being physically abused, of being left for dead. Why? Because of the hope of Israel, his brethren. He wanted them to know about Jesus. And as we continue over these next few weeks in the latter parts of Acts chapter 28, we're going to see his desire to expound truth unto them. Paul's own account of his trials is listed for us. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 11 very briefly. We're almost done. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 24. Within the context of 2 Corinthians 11, talking about those that boast in this flesh, those that have confidence in their foolish boasting. We see something about some of the things that Paul went through, and really the overview of Acts, as we have seen in some of his trials. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 24, of the Jews 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one. Thrice was I beaten with rods. Once was I stoned. Thrice I suffered shipwreck, a night and a day I've been in the deep. In journeyings often, in perils of waters, in perils of robbers, in perils by my own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness. This is what Paul went through. Verse 30, if I must needs glory, I will glory of the things which concern mine infirmities. The glory that Paul said that he would hold would not be in the foolish fleshly boastings of what he went through and what he had accomplished for Christ. His boasting was in, or his glory rather, was in his infirmities, because one chapter over we would learn that the glory in the infirmities in verse 9, that the power of Christ may rest upon me, is what Paul said. The things that he went through, the hardships that he suffered, because of the hope that he had in Jesus Christ, and the hope that was needed, and the desire that he had for his brothers, the Jews. This would lead him to say these words in Romans chapter 8 and verse 18. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Do you know what our problem is? We'll gladly take off a few days to go on a missions trip. Tell people somewhere else about Christ. But we don't have a burden. We don't have a driving passion for our Jerusalem like we should. Are you willing to give up some creature comfort? Even face mocking and peril? If it just means that one of your brethren might pass from death unto life. Every head bowed and every eye closed.